Hey guys, it's Anne, and today we're going to be talking about completing the square. So the first thing we have to talk about when we're talking about completing the square is how to solve quadratics, because completing the square is another way to solve quadratics. So a way to talk about this is through Mr. Coulter's hierarchy. On the top of his hierarchy is factoring, which is like the first thing we want to try to do when we're solving quadratics. It's really simple and it's really easy, which is why we like it. It's good for simple and like integer numbers, so numbers that are whole numbers, not like decimals. But if we have decimals, we can always complete the square, which is what we're going to talk about today. And if that doesn't work, or if you don't like that, you can always use quadratic formula, which I personally don't like because you have to memorize things and it's just really annoying. So I personally just do not like using quadratic formula. And another thing you could use is graphing. So you could graph the quadratic equation, which also takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and is just really annoying. So these are two things we don't want to use: quadratic formula and graphing. And what we really want to try to use is factoring and completing the square, because those are really easy to do and it doesn't take that many steps. And also completing the square is good for solving parabolas and circles into the best form of their equations that we can use. So when you talk about completing the square to solve for parabolas into another form of the equation, you're talking about solving for the parabola's vertex form. So this vertex form is y minus k equals a. That doesn't quite look like a k. Here we go. Equals a times x minus h squared. So since there's only one squared, which is what happens, this is what we do, this is what we make when we complete the square. Since there's only one of those, we complete the square only once. Now, if we were going to do it into a circle, perhaps, where the standard form, or I guess the form that we like, I guess, is y minus k squared plus x minus h squared equals r squared, you have two of these. So that means that you have to complete the square twice. So the example problem we're going to use today is y equals 1/2 x squared minus 16x plus 37. So right off the bat, this equation does not look factorable. I mean, you have the 1/2 there, you got the 37 there. No one really likes that. So we have to complete the square, which is the next best thing. And it's going to get us into vertex form, which is going to give us information about the parabola. So the first thing we have to do for any equation that we're trying to complete the square is we have to make sure that x squared, or whatever number is squared, is by itself. It has a coefficient of 1. So in order to do that, we have to get rid of this 1/2 here. So we multiply everything by 2. So then we get 2y equals x squared minus 32x plus 2 times 37. So now what we have to do is we have to get rid of this, because this is not really, it's still not factorable. We still can't factor anything. And so what we have to do is we have to minus this from both sides. So we get 2y minus 2 times 37 equals x squared minus 32x. So now what we have to do is we have to find a number here that would make it go into the form x plus or minus the number squared, which is what we saw when we were looking at the vertex form and the form of a circle, that equation of the circle. So those are the forms we want to get it into, where we're able to square that same number in the parentheses. So what we have to do in order to do that is, okay, so the first step you have to take when you are trying to find this number is you have to take the coefficient attached to that x, which is negative 32, and what you have to do is you have to, first step, take negative 32 and divide it by 2. So you get negative 16. And the second step is you have to take that negative 16 and square it, which gets you 256. Now what you have to do is you have to add 256 to both sides, because remember, if you add something on one side, you have to add it to the other. Otherwise, the equation changes at its meaning, and basically we don't want that to happen. We just want to modify the equation so it can help us get into vertex form and complete the square. To add to both sides, you get 2y minus 2 times 37 plus 256 equals x squared minus 32x plus 256. Now what you have to do is you have to factor this right here, and what you end up getting is you end up getting x minus 16 squared. So what you'll notice right away is that the 16 comes back when you factor it. So that means you don't actually have to factor it. All you have to do is look at the what number you got after you divide the coefficient of x divided by 2. So that would be negative 16. So we really didn't have to really factor at all, just had to remember what number we got here. Now since we have that, I'm going to move this all a little up so we can look at what we have once everything is solved. So we have this equals x minus 16 squared. And now what we have to do is we just have to make sure that y is by himself. So then we just divide everything by 1, 2, and multiply it by 1/2. And you get y minus 91 equals 1/2 x minus 16 squared. Okay, so I just realized I made a mistake. So when you actually do the addition of these two numbers, you actually get positive 91, which would have changed our answer a little bit if I hadn't caught that. So the vertex of this equation would end up being 16, negative 91, because it's negative, because remember there was already a minus sign as the set thing in the vertex form. So in order to make that positive, there must have been a negative number plugged into it. Okay, so a quick review. The first thing you want to do for completing the squares, you want to make sure that x squared, or whatever variable is squared, is all by itself. It has a coefficient of 1. And the second step you want to do is you want to get rid of any number that is near the x squared, that doesn't have an x attached to it. So in this case, it was x squared minus 32 plus 2 times 37. So you have to get rid of this. You have to minus 2 times 37 on both sides and get rid of it to the other side. The third step is you have to take this coefficient attached to x, which is negative 32, divide it by 2, and then square that number you get. Then that number is added to both sides. And then you factor the quadratic you're left with on the x squared side. Then after you do that, you make sure that y is by himself. He has a coefficient of 1. So you do whatever you can to make sure that's possible, and then you have your answer after everything is simplified. Wish you guys the best of luck today for finals. Bye-bye.